You can laugh. Go ahead. I don't blame you. If I heard this story from someone else, I'd probably laugh too. Or call them a liar. Because we see this stuff in movies, right? We watch it on the news from a safe distance, and we think we understand it. We think, that's terrible. And then we change the channel. We think it's something that happens to other people, in other places. Not at a Halloween party. Not surrounded by your friends, with a plastic cup of cheap punch in your hand. But I was there. And what I experienced, what I saw, what I heard, it wasn't a movie. There was no director to yell, "Cut." No script. No special effects blood. When people fell, they didn't get back up. The screams you hear in a horror film are actors pretending. The screams I heard, they were the last sounds some of my friends ever made. So you can sit there and smile. You can think I'm making this up for attention. But I'm telling you, with a certainty that chills my soul even now, that monsters are real. They don't have fangs or claws. They don't need them. They walk among us, dressed as people, and they carry a different kind of darkness inside. And on a night that was supposed to be about fake scares and fun, I learned what real, absolute, unforgiving terror feels like. It doesn't just scare you, it rewires you. It changes the very DNA of your soul. Let me tell you about it. Not so you'll be scared for a moment, but so you might understand why I haven't slept through the night since. It started with the music. The damn music was so loud you could feel it in your teeth. The bass was a heartbeat, the pulse of the entire party. And then, it stopped, not like when a song ends. This was an amputation. 1 second, sound was crashing over us in waves, and the next, nothing. Just a ringing silence that felt heavier, more menacing than any noise could ever be. And into that silence, a voice cut through. A man's voice, but it wasn't human anymore. It was pure, unfiltered rage. He was screaming, "You think this is a joke? You think I'm joking with you?" And I remember a thought, so stupid, so naive, flashing through my mind. Wow, someone took the Halloween scares way too seriously. That was my brain, still trying to force this into a box it understood. A party argument. A drunk guy causing a scene. My friend Leo, the big Viking, he knew better. I saw the look on his face. The smile was gone. It was like watching a light get snuffed out in his eyes. He muttered, "Ah, hell, not this again." He knew. He recognized the sound of real trouble. Then I saw the gun. It wasn't dramatic. It was just there, in his hand. A dull, gray metal thing. It looked small, insignificant. But the moment I saw it, the air in the room turned to ice. Every instinct in my body, every primal nerve ending fired at once. This was not a game. The first shot sounded like a balloon popping. A flat, stupid, insignificant sound. But the effect was instantaneous. The scream that followed wasn't a single thing. It was a living entity that erupted from every corner of the room. A wave of pure animal panic. People weren't people anymore. They were bodies reacting to a threat. Scrambling, falling, diving. Another pop, and another. Each one was a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't finished reading. This is where the memory starts to fracture. It's not a linear story anymore. It's flashes, sensations, the smell of gunpowder, sharp and acrid, cutting through the smell of sweat and perfume. The taste of copper in my mouth. I must have bitten my cheek. The sight of Sarah, my witch friend, frozen solid, her beautiful dress suddenly looking like a target. The feel of my own heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. This was the real thing. This was the terror you can't buy a ticket for. And it was only the beginning. You think you know what fear is? You don't. Not until you felt your own breath turn to knives in your lungs. Not until you've seen the person next to you just stop being a person. I'm not talking about jump scares or creepy stories. I'm talking about the kind of fear that rewires your DNA. The kind that becomes part of your bones. Let me describe the sound for you. Not the gunshots. Those were just loud noises. I'm talking about the sound a human body makes when it hits the floor, when it's not pretending. It's not like in the movies. There's no dramatic thud. It's a wet, heavy, final sound. Like a bag of meat being dropped. And the silence that follows, that's even worse. Because in that silence, you realize that person will never make another sound again. I remember crawling. My hands and knees on sticky, beer-soaked floorboards. Someone's fake blood, the cheap Halloween kind, smearing across my palms. And I remember thinking how stupid it was, that I was worried about getting my costume dirty while people were dying around me. That's what fear does to your brain. It makes you think about the most ridiculous things while your world is ending. The worst part? The smells. Gunpowder has this bitter, electric smell that gets in your nose and stays there for days. But mixed with that was the scent of perfume from the girls who dressed up. The smell of spilled alcohol, and underneath it all, this coppery, metallic smell that I later realized was real blood. Not the corn syrup kind. The kind that means life is leaking out of someone. I saw Leo go down, my big Viking friend. He was trying to help someone. Of course he was. That's who he was. He was pulling a girl behind a couch when it happened. He didn't scream. He just made this sound. Like all the air went out of him at once. And then he was just another body on the floor. Another costume in a puddle of something that wasn't fake. And the sounds people made, these weren't screams anymore. They were prayers. They were begging. They were calling for their mothers. Grown men crying for their moms like little kids. And over it all, that popping sound. That stupid, insignificant popping sound that kept ending lives. You want to know what real horror is? It's not monsters under your bed. It's realizing that the monster is just a man. A man who decided tonight was the night. A man who looked at a room full of laughing, drinking, costumed kids and decided to play a different game. The scariest part isn't the darkness. It's realizing the darkness lives inside people. Ordinary people. When I finally made it out, don't ask me how. I don't remember. My clothes were soaked. I thought it was sweat until I got under a streetlight and saw my hands were red. Really red. And I just stood there, shaking, looking at my red hands while sirens got closer. I couldn't tell you whose blood it was. Could be Leo's. Could be Sarah's. Could be from someone I never even met. That was 5 years ago. I still can't go to parties. I jump at loud noises. I have nightmares where I'm crawling on that floor forever. And every Halloween, when I see people laughing in their costumes, I want to scream at them. I want to tell them to go home. Because the real monsters aren't the ones wearing masks. The real monsters look just like you and me. So laugh if you want. Think I'm making this up. But I'll tell you this. When you've seen what I've seen, when you've felt real fear, you never really leave that room. Part of you stays there forever, crawling on that sticky floor, listening to those pops, watching your friends become memories. That's the truth about horror. It doesn't end when the credits roll. It lives with you. It becomes you. And no matter how many years pass, you're still just that scared kid in a zombie costume, wondering why he ever thought fake blood was scary when the real thing was waiting for him all along. What comes after the screaming stops? That's the part they never show you. The silence is worse. It's a heavy, thick silence that presses down on you until you can't breathe. I was lying behind an overturned couch, my face pressed into the carpet that smelled of beer and something else. Something metallic and sweet. I could hear moaning. Not the dramatic moans from horror films, but these weak, gurgling sounds. Like a broken radiator trying to work. Those were the sounds of people dying, slowly, painfully. And then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, moving through the wreckage. I remember holding my breath until spots danced in my vision. The shooter was still here. He was walking among us, like a gardener checking his plants. I heard him stop near me. I could see his shoes through the gap under the couch. Black boots, splattered with red. He stood there for what felt like hours. I could hear him breathing, this calm, even breathing, while all around him people were taking their last ragged breaths. Then his voice, so quiet, so conversational. He said, "Still playing dead, huh?" I don't know if he was talking to me or to someone else, but I felt my bladder let go. The warmth spread through my jeans, and I was so ashamed, so terrified that he would notice, that he would hear the dripping sound. But he just moved on, his footsteps fading away, leaving me lying in my own piss, too scared to move, too scared to even cry. That's when I learned the true meaning of terror. It's not the moment the gun fires. It's the moments between the shots. The anticipation, the wondering if you're next, the calculating in your head. If I run now, will he see me? If I stay, will he come back? Your mind becomes this frantic, trapped animal, chewing its own leg off to escape. I must have laid there for an hour after the front door finally slammed shut. The only sounds were the soft moans growing weaker, the drip of a leaky faucet from the kitchen, and this weird buzzing from a fallen speaker. Nobody moved. We were all still playing dead, just in case it was a trick. We were like possums frozen on the road, hoping the predator would lose interest. The first person to move was a girl dressed as a cat. I saw her hand twitch from under a table. Then she slowly, so slowly, lifted her head. Her pretty cat ears were bent, her face makeup smeared with tears and other things. Our eyes met across the room. In that look, we said everything without speaking. We're alive. For now. But what about everyone else? We started crawling out, one by one, like survivors emerging from a bomb shelter after the blast. Nobody spoke. We just moved in this stunned, silent dance, checking pulses, turning over bodies. I found Leo, my big, laughing Viking friend. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling with this surprised look, like he couldn't believe what had happened. I closed them with my trembling fingers, and that's when I noticed how cold he was. Already cold. The fur on his costume was stiff with blood. Some people weren't as lucky as me. Sarah, the witch, she was still alive when we found her. Barely. She kept trying to say something, but there was too much blood in her mouth. It just bubbled out. We held her hands while she stopped. Just like that. One moment there was life in her eyes. The next, nothing. Just an empty shell wearing a pretty black dress. When the police finally burst in, their flashlights cutting through the dark, we didn't cheer. We didn't run to them. We just stood there, covered in blood and worse, staring at them like they were aliens. They had to lead us out like children, and outside, the normal world was still there. Stars in the sky, a neighbor's dog barking, kids still trick-or-treating down the street, laughing. It was the most surreal, horrifying thing I've ever witnessed. How could the world just keep going when ours had ended? At the hospital, they tried to wash the blood off me. But some stains don't come out. I still see it under my fingernails sometimes. In my dreams, I'm always scrubbing my hands, but they never get clean. The smell of that carpet, beer and blood, it's stuck in my nose forever. They say time heals all wounds, but that's a lie. Some wounds just become part of who you are. They shape you. They twist you. I don't go to parties anymore. I don't celebrate Halloween. When I see people laughing in costumes, I feel this cold knot in my stomach. Because I know now how thin the veil is, how quickly the masks can become real, how easy it is for a night of fun to turn into a lifetime of nightmares. The shooter? They caught him 2 days later. He was sleeping in a motel room, watching TV like nothing happened. At the trial, he showed no emotion, just sat there, clean and calm in a nice suit. That was almost worse than what he did that night. The ordinariness of him, the banality of evil, they call it. He wasn't a monster from a nightmare. He was just a man. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. So when I tell you this story, and you shift uncomfortably, when you look away, I understand. It's easier to think this is just a story. But for me, and for the others who crawled out of that house, it's the air we breathe. It's the weight we carry. It's the price we pay for surviving when so many didn't. And let me tell you something. Surviving isn't the happy ending they make it out to be. Surviving is just the beginning of a different kind of hell. Something that will eventually be cleared away, like debris after a storm. But what they don't tell you is that the debris becomes the new landscape of your life. You don't clean it up. You learn to build your house around it. The first week was a blur of hushed voices and casseroles. My apartment became a shrine to something I couldn't quite comprehend. Neighbors left food on my doorstep, like I was mourning a single loss, not dozens. How do you explain that you're grieving for an entire universe that collapsed in the span of 15 minutes? That you're mourning not just people, but the person you used to be before you learned how blood smells when it's fresh. I stopped sleeping. Not just trouble sleeping. I mean, I became afraid of it. Because sleep meant dreams. And in my dreams, I was back there. But worse. Because in dreams, I had the power to change things. I'd see Leo about to step in front of that bullet, and I'd scream, but no sound would come out. I'd watch Sarah bleeding, and I'd know exactly how to save her. But my feet would be glued to that sticky floor. I'd wake up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat, the taste of copper in my mouth again. My therapist called it survivor's guilt. She gave it a name, as if naming it would tame it. She said my brain was trying to rewrite the story, to give me control in a situation where I'd had none. But knowing that didn't make the dreams stop. It just made me feel more broken. Knowing that even my subconscious was failing at basic tasks. The funerals were the worst. There were so many. We became professional mourners, my small group of survivors. We'd move from church to cemetery to church again, like ghosts haunting our own lives. We developed this unspoken language, a certain way of holding someone's arm when they started to shake. A particular look that meant, I need air. A squeeze of the hand that said, I'm still here. You're still here. At Leo's funeral, his mother clung to me. She kept asking me to tell her about his last moments. What did he say? Was he brave? I lied. I told her he died instantly, that he didn't feel anything. I didn't tell her about the sound he made, that wet, surprised exhale. I didn't tell her and crawling, that he died on his knees, trying to protect a stranger. Some truths are too heavy to pass on to a grieving mother, so I shouldered that one myself. Another piece of debris to build around. 3 months after the shooting, I tried to go back to work. I lasted 2 hours. The office was too quiet. Every time someone dropped a pen, I hit the floor. Literally. 1 minute I'd be at my desk, the next I'd be under it, heart pounding, waiting for the popping sounds to start. My coworkers tried to understand, but how could they? Their world still made sense. Mine had proven itself to be made of tissue paper, ready to tear at any moment. I started seeing threats everywhere. A man holding a long object, a gun, a car backfiring, the beginning of another massacre. My brain had become a conspiracy theorist, seeing patterns of violence in ordinary life. The therapist called it hypervigilance. I called it finally paying attention to how fragile everything is. The media didn't help. They ran the story for weeks. Our tragedy became content. They showed pictures of us from before, happy smiling in our costumes, not knowing we were posing for our own before pictures. They analyzed the shooter's life, trying to find the reason, as if understanding could somehow prevent it from happening again. But there is no reason that makes sense. There's only the before and the after, and the chasm between them that you can never cross back over. 6 months in, the nightmares changed. They became more subtle, more insidious. Instead of reliving the shooting, I'd dream about everyday situations that would suddenly turn violent. Ordering coffee when the barista would pull a gun. Sitting in a movie theater when the screen would start showing footage from that night. My trauma was getting creative, finding new ways to remind me that nowhere was safe. I stopped leaving my apartment. The world had become a minefield of triggers. A certain song that had been playing that night would come on the radio, and I'd be right back there. The smell of peach schnappies would make me vomit. Even the color orange, Halloween orange, would send me into a panic attack. I was a prisoner in my own mind, serving a life sentence for the crime of surviving. The one thing that kept me going was the other survivors. We'd meet sometimes, in a park or at someone's house, and we wouldn't even need to talk. We'd just sit together, this strange club that nobody wanted to belong to. We understood each other in a way that nobody else could. When one of us would suddenly go quiet, staring into the distance, the others knew to just wait it out. We were all having flashbacks, just at different times. One night, about a year after it happened, we were at Maya's apartment. She was the girl dressed as the cat, and we started talking about what we missed most from before. Not the big things, but the small, stupid things. I missed not checking exits when I entered a room. Maya missed being able to enjoy fireworks. Another guy, David, missed being able to wear his favorite hoodie. It was the same shade of orange as the punch that night. We were laughing, but it was this sad, broken laughter. The kind that's closer to crying. And then Maya said something I'll never forget. She said, "You know, in a way, we died that night too. The people we were before, they're gone. We're just what's left." And she was right. We were ghosts, haunting the lives we used to have. The trial was another kind of nightmare. Seeing him again, clean-shaven, well-dressed, looking like anybody's neighbor. He showed no emotion as they described what he'd done. No remorse as they showed crime scene photos. I kept waiting for some sign that he understood the magnitude of what he'd destroyed. But there was nothing. Just this empty shell of a man who had decided to play God for 15 minutes. And in doing so, had shattered countless lives forever. When they read the guilty verdict, there was no sense of victory, no closure, just this hollow feeling. Like we'd been climbing a mountain for a year, only to reach the top and discover there was nothing there. The weight didn't lift. The nightmares didn't stop. He was going to prison forever, but so were we. 2 years out now. People expect you to be better. They don't understand that this isn't an illness you recover from. It's an amputation. You learn to live without the limb, but it's still gone. I still jump at loud noises. I still have nightmares. I still can't be in crowded rooms. But I'm learning. learning to recognize when a panic attack is coming, learning breathing techniques that sometimes help, learning that it's okay to not be okay. I visited the graves last week. Leo, Sarah, the others. I told them about my life now. This strange half-life unbuilding from the wreckage. And I realized something standing there among the headstones. The shooting took everything from me. My sense of safety, my peace of mind, my friends. But it didn't take my ability to remember them as they were before. Their laughter, their stupid jokes, the way Leo could light up a room just by walking into it, the way Sarah always knew when you needed a hug. So I carry them with me now, not as they were at the end, but as they were in life. And I carry the others who survived too. We're broken, all of us, but we're broken together. And maybe that's the best we can hope for. Not healing, not moving on, but learning to carry the weight together. To build a new life, not on the ruins of the old one, but alongside them. To accept that the before and after will always exist side by side in us. And that's okay. That's where I am now, still crawling, but crawling forward. Still remembering, but trying to remember the good along with the bad. Still afraid, but learning that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward, even when every cell in your body is screaming to hide. And if you're listening to this, if you're going through your own darkness, just know this. Keep crawling. The sun will find you again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will find you. They never tell you about the anger. The grief, yes. The fear, absolutely. But the anger, it simmers. It becomes a constant companion, a low hum in your blood. For a long time, I was angry at everything. At the shooter, obviously, but also at the people who got to move on. At the friends who slowly stopped calling because they didn't know what to say. I was angry at the sun for having the audacity to rise every morning. I was angry at myself for surviving when better people didn't. This anger, it's a fire, and if you're not careful, it burns you up from the inside. I started having these fantasies. Not of revenge, exactly, but of understanding. I became obsessed with the why. I read every article, every psychological profile. I wanted to crawl inside that man's head and see what broken machinery was ticking in there. My therapist warned me. She said, some doors once opened cannot be closed. But I couldn't stop. I thought if I could just understand the why, the jagged edges of what happened might smooth over. It was a fool's errand. There is no why that makes sense. There is only the devastating how. Around the 3-year mark, something shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but it mutated. It turned into a desperate, clawing need for meaning. If my survival had to mean something, then the loss had to mean something too. I started volunteering with a group that supports survivors of gun violence. The first time I walked into that room, I saw my own reflection in a dozen different faces. The hollow eyes, the flinch at a slamming door, the way we all chose seats with our backs to the wall near the exit. We were a choir of the broken, singing a hymn only we knew the words to. I met a woman there named Eleanor. Her son was killed in a school shooting 10 years ago. 10 years, and the pain in her eyes was as fresh as mine. She took my hand one night after a meeting, her skin papery and thin. She said, "The weight never gets lighter, child. You just get stronger at carrying it." There was a comfort in that, a strange one. The acknowledgement that this pain is permanent. You don't get over it. You grow around it, like a tree grows around a fence post, eventually absorbing it into your very structure. I started writing. At first, it was just chaotic, angry scribbles in a notebook. Then, it became letters to Leo, to Sarah, telling them about the world they were missing. The stupid, simple things. The way the coffee shop on the corner changed their muffin recipe. The new superhero movie that Leo would have loved. I told Sarah about the sunset I saw last Tuesday. A blaze of orange and purple that would have matched her dress. It was my way of keeping them alive, of weaving them back into the fabric of a world that kept trying to forget them. And then, I did something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. I went back. The house had been sold, renovated. The new owners had painted it a cheerful yellow. They'd put a swing set in the front yard. From the outside, it was just a house. There was no residue of the horror that had happened within those walls. I stood across the street for an hour, my heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for the panic to consume me. But it didn't. I felt nothing, and that was almost worse. The epicenter of my trauma had been sanitized, turned into a happy family home. The past had been literally painted over. It was in that moment of eerie calm that I realized the real battlefield wasn't that house. It never had been. The real battlefield was my own mind, and I had been letting the enemy occupy it for years. I had been a tenant in my own head, paying rent in nightmares and flashbacks. It was time to reclaim the territory. This isn't a story of a miraculous recovery. There is no magic cure. The next part is just life. The hard, unglamorous work of rebuilding. It's forcing yourself to go to the grocery store, even when the crowd makes your skin crawl. It's sitting through a full movie without having to leave the theater. It's learning to distinguish between the real threat and the ghost of one. It's exhausting, mundane, and it's the bravest thing I've ever done. I still have bad days. Days where the sound of a car backfiring sends me right back to that floor. Days where the smell of fake blood around Halloween makes me vomit. But now, there are also good days. Days where I laugh so hard I forget to be sad. Days where I can talk about Leo and smile at the memory instead of collapsing under its weight. The script of my life was torn in half that night. The first half was written in ink of innocence and laughter. The second half started in blood and terror. But I'm learning that I hold the pen now. I can't change the chapters that are already written, but I can decide what comes next. It won't be a happy ending. Those are for fairy tales. But it can be an authentic one. A story of a man who was broken, who saw the worst of humanity, and who is slowly, painstakingly, learning how to look for the light again, without forgetting the darkness that gave his eyes the ability to see it. So I continue, one breath at a time, one step at a time, carrying the ghosts, honoring the lost, and fighting for every inch of peace I can find. This is not the life I wanted, but it is the life I have. And I am finally ready to live it. 5 years, a lifetime, a blink. The anniversary doesn't hit me like a sledgehammer anymore. It's more like a change in atmospheric pressure, a subtle shift I feel in my bones, days before I consciously remember the date. I've learned to be gentle with myself during that week. I visit the graves, but now I bring flowers instead of just questions. I light a candle for each of them, Leo, Sarah, the others. And for a few hours, my quiet apartment feels like a sacred space, a memorial that breathes. I went back to college. Can you believe that? At 32, surrounded by kids who were in grade school when my life split in two. I'm studying psychology. The irony isn't lost on me. My professor talks about trauma responses, and I'm the living, breathing case study in the back row. But it's different now. I'm not trying to dissect my own pain anymore. I'm learning how to help carry others. It turns out, the deepest wounds can become the source of your greatest empathy. The broken parts of me are now the very tools I use to understand the brokenness in others. I even went on a date. Her name is Clara, a friend of a friend. I told her on our third date. Not the whole story, but enough. I said I was in a mass shooting. It left some scars. She didn't flinch. She didn't offer pity. She just took my hand and said, "Thank you for telling me." And in that moment, I felt a crack in the fortress I'd built around my heart. It wasn't a collapse, just a door opening, letting in a little light. We're taking it slow. She understands that sometimes I need to sit with my back to the wall in a restaurant. She doesn't mind when I need a quiet night in instead of a loud party. She's teaching me that trust isn't about believing the world is safe. It's about believing you can survive, even when it's not. The work with the survivors group has become my anchor. I'm no longer just a participant. I help run the meetings. I see the new ones come in, their eyes holding that same shattered glass look I once saw in the mirror. When I speak to them, I don't offer platitudes. I don't say it gets better. I say it changes. You learn to carry it, and you are not alone. I see the relief in their faces when they realize they're in a room where they don't have to explain why they jumped at a car backfiring. We are a family forged in the same fire, and that bond is stronger than blood. I saw the shooter's mother once, in a grocery store of all places. She was staring at a cereal box, her cart empty except for a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. She looked so small, so ordinary. I felt the old anger rise, hot and sharp. I wanted to scream at her. What did you create? What monster did you raise? But as I watched her, I saw the slump of her shoulders, the deep, permanent grief etched into her face. She is a victim too, in her own way. A different kind of survivor. I put my basket down and walked away. That anger, I'm done carrying it. It's too heavy, and I need my strength for other things. The nightmares are less frequent now, maybe once a month instead of every night. And when they come, I have tools. I get up. I make tea. I write in the journal I keep by my bed. I've learned to comfort that terrified young man I was. Instead of fighting him, I tell him, "It's over. You survived. You are safe now." It sounds simple, but it's a ritual that has taken years to perfect. Life now is a patchwork. There are still dark threads, days of anxiety, moments of sudden sorrow when a memory ambushes me. But there are bright threads too. The satisfaction of helping a new survivor, the warmth of Clara's hand in mine, the quiet pride of finishing a semester with good grades. It's not the life I planned, but it's a life with purpose. My pain has become my compass, pointing me toward people who need the understanding that only someone who's been there can offer. So if you're listening to this, if you're in the thick of your own darkness, know this: the path forward isn't a straight line. It's a winding, messy, often painful climb. You will lose your way. You will want to quit, but you keep going. You carry the ones you lost with you, not as burdens, but as guides. You honor them by living, truly living, not just existing in the shadow of their loss. You keep going. You wake up each morning, and you make a choice. It's not a grand, heroic choice. It's a quiet, stubborn one. You choose to put your feet on the floor. You choose to breathe in, and you choose to breathe out. You choose to face the ghost in the hallway, the memory in the coffee cup, the echo in the silence. And some days, that choice is the most monumental achievement of your life. Let me tell you what keeping going actually looks like. It's not a montage of triumph set to inspiring music. It's ugly. It's real. It's the Tuesday morning you find yourself sobbing in your car in the grocery store parking lot because a song came on the radio that Leo loved. It's the flashback that hits you in the middle of a work meeting. Your heart hammering, your palms sweating, while you desperately try to keep your face neutral and your breathing even. It's the frustration of explaining to a well-meaning friend for the 100th time why you still can't go to a crowded bar for their birthday. Keeping going means building a new relationship with fear. Fear is no longer an enemy to be defeated. It's a companion you've learned to manage. It sits in the passenger seat of your car. Sometimes it's quiet, lulled by the rhythm of the road. Other times, it screams, grabbing the wheel, convinced you're about to crash. You don't try to throw it out of the moving vehicle anymore. You've learned that's impossible. Instead, you learn to pat its hand, acknowledge its presence, and say, "I hear you, but I'm still driving." You learn its triggers, the certain way a door slams, the specific cadence of an argument rising in the next room, the smell of gunpowder on the 4th of July. You learn to brace for it, to breathe through it, to let the wave of panic crest and break without pulling you under. And the guilt, the survivor's guilt, it's a shapeshifter. In the beginning, it was a boulder on my chest, crushing me. Why did I live? Why did I get to crawl out when Leo, who was braver, who was better, did not? I've carried that question for years. The answer never comes. There is no answer. But the question itself, it has changed. It's no longer a weapon I use to beat myself with. It's become a challenge, a mandate. You lived. So what are you going to do with that? It's the engine behind every time I speak up at a support group meeting. It's the fuel that gets me to my classes when I'm exhausted. My life is a loan from the ones who were stolen. I have to make the payments count. This path, this winding, messy climb, it forces you to find a different kind of strength. You discover reserves you never knew you had. A ferocious tenderness for your own broken parts. A patience for the slow, non-linear process of healing. You learn to celebrate the microscopic victories. Today I heard a balloon pop, and I only flinched. I didn't dive for cover. That's a victory. Today I walked past a Halloween store without my pulse skyrocketing. That's a victory. Today I told a story about Sarah, and I laughed instead of cried. That's a goddamn miracle. And you learn about triggers, not as things to be avoided forever, but as landmarks on a map of your pain. You learn to navigate them. Some you still steer wide around. Others, you learn you can approach cautiously, with the right tools and the right people beside you. Clara, she's become my co-navigator. She doesn't try to fix me. She just holds the map while I figure out the route. She's teaching me that intimacy isn't about hiding your scars. It's about letting someone else trace them with a gentle finger and learn their story. The world keeps trying to sell you closure, a neat, tidy ending where you tie a bow around your trauma and put it on a shelf. Let me tell you, closure is a myth. There is no finish line. There is no point where you're over it. The loss of a life, the violation of your safety, these are tectonic shifts. They don't just rumble and stop. They reshape the entire continent of your soul. The fissures they leave behind become rivers, canyons, new landscapes you must learn to inhabit. You don't get your old self back. You build a new self, incorporating the rubble of the old. And in that building, you find a strange, powerful kind of freedom. When you faced the absolute worst, a lot of the smaller fears in life just lose their power. The fear of looking foolish, meaningless. The fear of failure, a minor inconvenience. You've already survived the thing you were most afraid of. You've already stared into the abyss. Everything else is just weather. You keep climbing. Not because you're sure of the summit, but because the act of climbing itself has become your purpose. This is the next part. It's the part after the breakdown, after the diagnosis, after the funerals, after the trial. It's the part nobody makes movies about, because it's not dramatic. It's diligent. It's the daily, unglamorous work of soul carpentry, of taking splintered, shattered wood and slowly, carefully, sanding it, joining it, building something new, something functional, something that, despite its scars, can still stand strong against the wind. And you realize, one ordinary Tuesday, that you are no longer just surviving, you are building, you are growing. You are, against all odds, living. Not a perfect life, not an easy one, but a rich one. A life deepened by its sorrows, strengthened by its fractures, and fiercely, passionately dedicated to the simple, profound act of moving forward, one winding, messy, sacred step at a time. The darkness is still there, but you are no longer in the thick of it. You have become the light, however flickering. That there comes a point where the memory of the terror starts to feel like a story you were told, rather than a thing you lived. It doesn't lose its truth. It just loses its sharp edges. The sound of the gunshots, once so immediate they could make me vomit, is now an echo in a distant canyon. I can examine it, measure its dimensions, without it tearing me open. I've started dreaming about them again, you know? Not the dying, the living. Last week, I dreamt I was at a barbecue with Leo, a completely ordinary, boring backyard barbecue. He was flipping burgers, complaining that I'd bought the cheap buns. He was so mundane. And when I woke up, for the first time, I wasn't gutted. I was comforted. It felt like a visit, like he'd dropped by to remind me that his essence wasn't the gurgling sound on the floor, but the man who cared about burger bun quality. The trauma had tried to claim his entire identity, to brand him as a victim. That dream gave a piece of him back to me. This is the part they never tell you about. The reclamation. You start taking back the things the violence stole. For years, I couldn't listen to any music that was popular that year. It was a direct pipeline back to that room. But then, a month ago, I was driving and one of those songs came on the radio. Instead of changing the station, I made a choice. I turned it up. I let it fill the car. And I cried. I cried for the kids we were, who were just dancing. I cried for the loss, but I didn't dissociate. I didn't panic. I just let the music be music again. It was a small act of rebellion, a reclaim. My work with the support group has evolved. I don't just share my story anymore. I listen. I've become a keeper of other people's stories, a witness to their pain. And in doing so, my own pain has found a context. It's not this unique, monstrous thing anymore. It's part of a larger, sadder, but profoundly human tapestry. A woman who lost her husband in a robbery. A man who survived a bombing. A teenager caught in a school shooting. Our details are different, but the architecture of our suffering is the same. The guilt, the fear, the hypervigilance, the longing. In holding space for them, I finally learned to hold space for myself. I think about the shooter sometimes, not with rage, with a kind of detached, clinical pity. He is a void, a negative space. He took lives, but he erased his own soul in the process. He is now just a number in a prison system, a case file. We, the survivors, we are the ones who have to do the hard work of meaning making. We are the ones who have to feel everything he tried to destroy. In a strange way, we are more alive than he will ever be again. We carry the weight of the full human experience, the devastating grief and the defiant joy. He carries nothing. Clara and I are talking about moving in together. The very idea would have sent me into a spiral of anxiety a few years ago. The vulnerability of it, the permanence. What if I have a nightmare and scare her? What if my triggers become her burden? But she said something to me that stuck. She said, "Your trauma is a part of you, but it is not the whole of you. I want all the parts." So we're looking at apartments, with good sight lines to the doors, with a spare room I can go to if I need quiet. We're building a life, but we're building it with my scars as part of the blueprint, not as a secret flaw to be hidden. The anniversary just passed. 5 years. I went to the memorial service, like I always do. But this time, I stood a little straighter. I held Clara's hand, and I looked at the names carved in stone. And I didn't just feel loss. I felt responsibility. A duty to live a life that is big enough, brave enough, and kind enough to honor all the lives that were cut short. My life is their legacy. Every good thing I do is a defiance of that one night of evil. So this is the next part, the part after the healing. The part where you stop being a victim of your past and start being an architect of your future. The pain is no longer a prison. It's a foundation. A foundation made of terrible, hard, unshakable knowledge. The knowledge of how fragile it all is. And because I know that, I don't waste a single, ordinary, beautiful day. I don't take a quiet coffee for granted. I don't take a lazy Sunday for granted. I don't take the sound of Clara's laughter for granted. The Halloween party murders will always be the dividing line of my life. But I'm no longer stranded on one side of it, staring back at the innocence I lost. I've built a bridge, and I walk across it every day, carrying the lessons, carrying the love, carrying the memories. The darkness is behind me. It's a part of my history, but it is no longer my home. My home is here, in the present, in the light, and I am, finally, at peace. Peace. It's a word I never thought I'd understand, let alone embody. It's not the absence of noise or pain. It's not some blissful, eternal calm. The peace I found is more like the quiet hum of a city after the riots have ended. The rubble has been cleared, new structures have risen, but if you press your ear to the ground, you can still feel the faint tremor of what happened. You never forget the earthquake, but you learn to trust the stability of the new foundations you've built. 7 years. It feels significant, like I've completed some kind of cycle. I graduated last month. A degree in clinical psychology. My cap and gown felt heavier than they should have, weighted with all the lives that helped me get there. Leo's name was etched inside my graduation cap. Sarah's too. They walked with me across that stage. I didn't feel sad. I felt powered by them, as if their unspent potential had become my fuel. My thesis was on post-traumatic growth and the formation of identity in mass trauma survivors. I wasn't just studying it. I was living proof of it. The professors called it groundbreaking research. I just called it my life. Clara and I did move in together. The first night in the new apartment, I lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a new space. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic. And for the first time in years, none of those sounds felt like a threat. They were just the sounds of a life being lived. Our life. We have a ritual now. Every Sunday morning, we make pancakes. It's stupidly simple, but it's become this sacred, stable anchor in my week. The smell of coffee and batter, the sizzle of the pan, Clara's sleepy smile. These are the moments that rebuild a soul. I still lead the support group. A new young man joined last week. He couldn't make eye contact. His hands shook. He'd been in a mall shooting 3 months prior. I saw myself in him, that raw, flayed-open version of me from years ago. When he spoke, his voice was a ragged whisper, describing the sounds, the smells, the guilt of running while others fell. The group listened, a circle of quiet understanding. When he finished, I didn't offer him advice. I just said, "I know, and I'm so sorry you're here, but you are not alone anymore." He finally looked up, and in his eyes, I saw a tiny flicker of not hope, not yet, but connection. A lifeline. And I realized this is why I had to go through it. To be able to throw that rope to someone else who is drowning. I've even started to forgive myself for surviving, for the lies I told Leo's mother, for the years I was a ghost. I've started to see that young man I was, not as weak or cowardly, but as someone who did what he had to do to make it through an unimaginable hell. I've started talking to him in my mind, that terrified kid covered in blood and piss. I tell him, "You did good. You held on. You made it." And I finally believe it. The world keeps turning. There are new tragedies, new headlines, new names added to the grim roster of violence. When I see them, I don't look away. I feel a profound, aching solidarity with the new wave of survivors being created in that moment. I send out a silent prayer into the universe for them, for their long, hard road ahead. And I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that many of them will find their way too. Because the human spirit is relentlessly, stubbornly resilient. My story is no longer just about a Halloween party. It's about what comes after the end. It's about the slow, deliberate, unglamorous work of reassembling a self from a million shattered pieces. And the strange, beautiful truth is that the reassembled version is stronger, more complex, and more deeply connected to the pulse of life than the original ever was. The fear is still a part of my weather, but it's no longer my climate. Joy is my climate now. A quiet, resilient, deeply appreciated joy. The joy of a shared meal. The joy of a finished book. The joy of holding my partner's hand. The joy of being able to say, "I am here. I am alive. And I am so grateful for this complicated, painful, breathtakingly beautiful life." The night of the Halloween party murders tried to teach me about death, but it ended up teaching me everything about life. And for that, strange as it is to say, I am thankful. The darkness didn't destroy me. It taught me how to see in the dark. And now, I can help others find their way. This isn't an ending. It's a continuous beginning, and I am ready for all of them. I used to think that healing meant the wound closes, leaving only a faint scar you can point to and say, "That happened, but it's over now." I was wrong. Healing is the wound becoming a well. You draw from it. It quenches a thirst you didn't know you had. The thirst for purpose, for depth, for a raw and real connection to the fragile thread of life. 8 years. The number feels both immense and insignificant. It's long enough for a child to be born and grow into a person who can read and write and ask big questions. It's long enough for cities to change, for trends to cycle, for forests to grow. And in that time, I have not gotten over it. I have integrated it. The trauma is no longer a foreign. I got married to Clara in a small, sun-drenched ceremony in a park, not far from where we live. No loud music, no crowded dance floor, just the rustling of leaves and the vows we spoke to each other. I wore a simple suit, no costume. For the first time since that night, I felt completely, unapologetically myself. Leo was there, in the old Viking drinking horn I'd filled with whiskey and placed on a memorial table. Sarah was there, in the single black dahlia in Clara's bouquet. They were guests of honor. When the officiant asked if anyone present knew of any reason these two should not be married, I half expected to feel a jolt of anxiety, a ghost from the past shouting a reason. Instead, there was only a deep, resonant silence, broken by the sound of a bird singing. It felt like a blessing from the universe itself. My work has become my calling. I'm a licensed therapist now, specializing in trauma. My office is a quiet, safe space with soft lighting and chairs that don't squeak. I don't just use textbooks. I use my life. When a patient tells me they feel broken beyond repair, I can look them in the eye and say, with absolute certainty, I know that feeling. And I am here to tell you that it is a lie. I don't heal them. I just hold up a mirror so they can see the strength that's already there, buried under the fear. I help them find their own well. I spoke to Leo's mother again, not at a graveside, but over lunch at a quiet cafe. She's older now, her hair fully white. She told me about a dream she'd had, where Leo was a grown man, with a family of his own, and he was happy. She said talking to me, knowing I was living a life he would have been proud of, had brought her a measure of peace she thought she'd never find. We held hands across the table, two people bound together, not by blood, but by a shared, devastating love. There was no lie between us anymore, just the truth, weathered and softened by time, like a stone in a river. The Halloween season comes around now, and I don't dread it. I observe it. I see the children in their costumes, their eyes wide with the safe, thrilling fear of make-believe, and I feel a protective tenderness. I want their world to stay that way. I leave my porch light on for them, a bowl of candy by the door. I am no longer a prisoner of that night. I have become a guardian of the innocence it tried to destroy. The anger is gone, truly gone. It didn't vanish in a puff of smoke. It evaporated, drop by drop, through acts of love, through the slow accumulation of good days, through the profound understanding that holding on to it was only hurting me. The man who held the gun no longer holds any power over my inner world. He is a footnote in my story, not the title. So this is it. This is the part beyond the recovery, beyond the resilience. This is life. A rich, complex, deeply textured life. It has known the bottom of the abyss, and because of that, it appreciates the view from the summit all the more. The memories of that night are like old photographs now. They can make my heart ache, but they can't draw blood. If you're still listening, if you're on your own winding path, know this. The journey does not end with the pain. It moves through it. And on the other side, if you're brave enough to keep walking, you will find a version of yourself you could never have imagined. Stronger, softer, and infinitely more alive. You will find that the very thing that was meant to destroy you becomes the source of your greatest strength. You will find your well. You can laugh. Go ahead. I don't blame you. If I heard this story from someone else, I'd probably laugh too, or call them a liar. Because we see this stuff in movies, right? We watch it on the news from a safe distance, and we think we understand it. We think, that's terrible. And then we change the channel. We think it's something that happens to other people, in other places. Not at a Halloween party. Not surrounded by your friends, with a plastic cup of cheap punch in your hand. But I was there. And what I experienced, what I saw, what I heard, it wasn't a movie. There was no director to yell, cut. No script. No special effects blood. When people fell, they didn't get back up. The screams you hear in a horror film are actors pretending. The screams I heard, they were the last sounds some of my friends ever made. Free. It's a word I've been turning over in my mind lately. For so long, I thought freedom would mean forgetting. A state of amnesia where the memories lost their power and the ghosts finally faded to nothing. But that's not it at all. Freedom isn't the absence of the past. It's the integration of it. It's looking at the scars. The one on my knee from crawling on that beer-soaked floor. The invisible ones, etched deep inside. And recognizing them not as wounds, but as a map. A map that led me here. Here. It's a Wednesday morning. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window, painting a bright rectangle on the wooden surface. Clara is humming off-key in the other room, looking for her keys. The cat is weaving figure eights around my ankles, demanding breakfast. This moment is so ordinary, it's almost boring, and it's the most profound victory of my life. Because I am fully, completely in it. I'm not mentally bracing for a loud noise. I'm not dissecting the hum of the refrigerator for a threat. I'm just drinking my coffee, tasting the bitter richness of it, feeling the warmth of the mug in my hands. This simple, unremarkable presence is the essence of my freedom. It was earned, sip by sip, breath by breath, over 8 long years. I think about the concept of a before and after. Sometimes, that's how we're taught to frame traumatic events. There's the innocent before and the shattered after. But I'm starting to feel a third state emerging, a during. Not the during of the actual event, but a during that encompasses the rest of your life. A continuous state of becoming, where the before and after are no longer at war, but are in conversation. The naive joy of the boy I was before informs the deep appreciation I have now, shelters it. They aren't separate. They've merged. I am both of them, simultaneously. My work continues to surprise me. Just last week, a woman came to me. Her story, a heartbreaking echo of my own. She'd survived a concert shooting. She couldn't listen to music anymore. She said it felt like a betrayal of the dead. I didn't give her a technique or a coping mechanism right away. I told her about the car ride, about turning up the radio and crying. I told her that reclaiming the things we love isn't a betrayal. It's the ultimate act of defiance. It's saying, "You did not get to take this too." She cried. Then she asked if we could sit in silence for a moment, and we did. In that quiet room, I felt the legacy of my pain transform into a tool for her healing. That is a privilege I never could have imagined. Clara found her keys, by the way. They were in the fridge next to the butter. She'd put them there while putting away the groceries. We laughed about it, a real belly-deep laugh that filled the apartment. I looked at her, at this beautiful, chaotic, kind woman who chose to build a life with a man whose soul still sometimes feels like a mosaic glued back together. And I was overwhelmed, not by the weight of my past, but by the sheer, staggering luck of my present. The night of the shooting taught me that randomness can be cruel, but it can also be kind. It is randomly, miraculously kind that I met her. I visited the park where we got married last weekend. The memorial table and the guests are long gone, but the feeling remains, soaked into the earth. I sat on the same bench and watched the world go by. A couple arguing, a man teaching his dog to fetch, a little girl dressed not in a Halloween costume but in a fluffy pink tutu, spinning in circles until she fell down, dizzy and giggling. Life, just life, in all its messy, mundane, glorious detail. And I was a part of it. Not an observer hiding in the shadows, but a participant. The Halloween party murders are a chapter in my story. A dark, brutal, pivotal chapter. But the book didn't end there. The story kept going. It's still going. It's in the coffee on my table. It's in the hum of my wife in the next room. It's in the quiet courage of the patients who trust me with their pain. The terror of that night is a fossil now. I can hold it in my hand, examine its shape, learn from it, and there is a world of difference between the two. So, if this is where my story leaves off for now, know that it leaves off in a place of light. Not a naive, untested light, but a light that has known and endured the darkness, and is brighter and more resilient for it. The path never really ends. You just get better shoes, and you learn to enjoy the walk, no matter the weather. And you realize, with a start, that you wouldn't be who you are. You wouldn't have this depth, this capacity for love, this hard-won peace, without every single step of the journey, even the ones that left you bleeding, especially those